Hi guys, it is Saturday and you know what that means. It's time for another week's end wrap up. It's Saturday, so my hair's still wet even though it's 3 o'clock because, you know, it's Saturday. But we're just gonna roll with it. I didn't want to wait for my hair to dry, so you get wet hair, Erin. So this week has been kind of crazy. We had the 4th of July, my sister's birthday, dog went to the vet. It's been a week. Dog's fine, by the way. And so anyway, I only read 3 books this week and one of them was a graphic novel. So yeah, I actually thought, I was like, should I even do one of these? Because I only have 3 books to talk about. And I was like, you know, we'll just be consistent and do it with 3 books. So it'll be a short video. Maybe that's a good thing. I can't actually remember what order I finished these in, so we're just gonna go with, yeah. First, or maybe not first, but the first book I'm gonna talk about is Neil Gaiman's Game of You. Gaiman? I can't remember how to pronounce it. I should probably look that up. This is volume 5 of the Sandman series, and this one was quite interesting. I kind of remember this. This volume is one story. It goes back to a character named Barbie who was in volume 2, A Doll's House, as kind of a peripheral character, but because of the events that happened in that volume, she has been impacted by that, has moved to New York and made a new group of Motley Crue friends, and she hasn't dreamed since then. And she used to have this really vivid dream that was basically like a story. She was a princess, there were all of these strange creatures that were like adventures, and they come back and actually like into the real world and say, hey, we need you, we need help, and she ends up going back into the dream world, and then she's attacked and stuff happens. Dream is kind of a peripheral character here. A lot of the story takes place in the dream world, but he only kind of shows up at the very end. This does tie in to the larger world, but it's pretty self-contained. Like, it ties into the future things too. But not my favorite one. I guess maybe 3 stars for me, but I'm not mad I read it. We're doing the reread thing, so I'm getting the story, like what is in each volume, kind of straighter, which is nice. I'm looking forward to the next handful of volumes because stuff really starts getting rolling there. Another book that I finished this week was City of Ashes. Me from a slightly future moment in time with drier hair. I reviewed City of Bones very incoherently, and it was a rough minute there. And then I left, puppy's back, and was thinking about it some more, and I think my thoughts are a little bit more coherent now, so we're gonna try it again. So City of Ashes picks up after City of Bones, pretty much like I don't know, right away, a little bit after. It's close. There's not like a big time gap. And one of the first major things that happens is all of the grown-ups come home, including the Lightwood parents, and kind of take the kids to task for some of the things that they did in City of Bones. Some revelations from the first book put Jace, I think it's still his name, under suspicion, and the Inquisitor is called, and she's going to question him with the Sword of Truth, or whatever it's called, and then Valentine steals it, so that's a problem. Stuff kind of goes from there. Clary starts to discover that she has maybe some extra powers beyond what the Shadowhunters have, and there's lots of questions that are asked. And anyway, I liked this book better than City of Bones. I would rate it maybe like 2 3/4 or 3 stars. I think just as a narrative, it was a little bit more coherent. It felt a little bit more solid than the first book. I still don't love these characters. I feel like Simon just gets shafted. Jace is kind of a jerk. I'd like to see more of Alec and Isabel. They feel pretty one-dimensional, and I think they have a lot of potential. I still think Magnus Bane is one of the most well-rounded characters of the whole crew here. The Inquisitor was kind of the antagonist in the story, and she was again one of those authority figure who hardline no, this is the right thing, you are the wrong thing, I will not listen to you. She gets a little bit of, like, we kind of understand why at the end, but I just really hate that kind of antagonist. If you're gonna hardline, I want to know from the beginning why you're such a hardliner and not, like, tell me later, because it just, like, I put down books when characters like that show up. So, the fact that I kept reading, I remember that I started this book and DNF'd it. So, like, I read City of Bones, I started City of Ashes, and then I DNF'd it and never continued with the series, and I think The Inquisitor was a big reason why. So I kind of, like, pushed through that, and it ended up being okay. The ending was good and interesting. My problem with the book, and with City of Bones too, I think mostly what I've been having trouble articulating, because I can't put my finger on any one particular thing other than, like, I don't love the characters. The world building is really good. I'm very impressed with, like, how detailed and thought out it is, which is really nice. I'd like to see more of it. Good thing there's a lot of books. So what I finally figured out was, I think one of the things that makes me continually rate these books lower, and I say continually, like, there's only 2 of them so far that I've finished, but you know those History Channel shows that are like, here's a shocking piece of evidence that you're gonna hear about, you know, it's like, oh, scientists or historians think that they've discovered where the lost city of Atlantis is, and then the show is all about Atlantis, and it, like, is constantly like, after the break, find out this shocking thing, what about this question? And then it's answered, and you're like, oh, that's dumb. And they're like, finally, at the end of the hour-long program, they're like, guess what? We think the lost city of Atlantis was Crete. And you're like, okay, I knew that already. Like, cool. And so I feel like that's kind of what's been going on in these 2 books. And to me, when that kind of thing is happening, where the like, mystery or the, like, question is over foreshadowed and overplayed up, it's because the author feels like the plot and the characters aren't strong enough to keep you reading, and they feel like they have to, like, build this kind of false tension, and then when you get to the end, you're kind of like, oh, okay, cool, like, Clary has extra powers, yay! And I think that's kind of what's been making me less interested in it. Like, give me some questions to answer, but then, like, let your big reveal not be the answer to those questions, but, like, the questions that I didn't know that I wanted to know the answer to. I would prefer to read a book where it's like, ooh, intriguing, mysterious question, and then it's answered, which brings up more questions, and then those questions are answered, as opposed to just, like, having one kind of thing come up over and over and over again, and then not even be answered in the book, which is kind of what happened with this one. And also I feel like City of Bones did that a little bit. I think Claire is a good enough writer that she doesn't need to use that device, so that is a little annoying to me. I think maybe it's just because she, in these 2 books, is still a new writer, and it'll be interesting again to see, like, does that change over the course of the story. I'm almost twice as old as the target audience for these, and I'm twice as old as some of the main characters, so that's another thing. I think maybe that I'm just judging it a little bit more critically and a little harder than, like, the actual target audience. And I never read these when I was this age, or, like, closer to this age. I had already graduated high school by the time that these came out, but so I think maybe if I had read them when I was younger, I would have just liked them a lot more. I think I would have been really fascinated by the world building, and I would have liked the characters a little bit better, but just kind of looking at them from a more outsider's perspective, an adult perspective, the flaws in the novel seem more problematic to me than they might seem for some other people. But it just feels kind of high school to me. So that is kind of my problem, and this is a very long review, but I think I've finally articulated kind of why I've been rating these books pretty low. But yes, so back to the past me to continue with this week's end wrap up. The last book I finished was an ebook, and that was The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter. This book I had, like, heard about at some point. I threw it in my Goodreads TBR, like, last summer, I guess, when it came out. I had just kind of seen it and it looked fun, and then kind of forgot about it. And, you know, Goodreads alerts you when there's like a Kindle deal for the puppy's here, she needs attention, because nobody loves her. They'll be, you know, there's a book on sale, whatever, and I was like, oh, okay. And a lot of times if they're like $2 or $3, I'll just buy it, because why not? And anyway, when I was at the vet waiting for the dog, I started reading it because it was there. And I actually ended up really liking this. I am super looking forward to the second volume, which comes out this week, I think, or next week, soon. And that's probably why the book was on sale. So this is about Mary Jekyll, who is, yes, the daughter of that Dr. Jekyll from Jekyll and Hyde. It's kind of a little bit of a, it's set in 1890s, the 1890s in London, and it's a little bit of, it's like kind of fantasy, I guess. Like, it's speculative. So what if a lot of characters from Victorian novels were actually real and had children? And so Mary Jekyll, her mother has just died, her father died when she was a child, and she has been left pretty much penniless. And while she's going through her mother's papers, she finds a reference to her mother paying something for Hyde, and she's like, what? And was a reward offered for Mr. Hyde, who she knows is just a friend of her father's. The reward would help her financially, so she investigates. In the course of the investigation, she ends up consulting Mr. Sherlock Holmes, and John Watson is there, and eventually gathers together this kind of like interesting group of women. And I'm not going to say anymore because it was fun to just like have these little surprises, but if you like Victorian literature at all, I would really recommend reading this. It was just really fun. There wasn't anything like deep or anything about it, but definitely like a fun little mystery. The story was left kind of hanging a little bit for the second book in the series, which I'm really looking forward to writing, whatever. I liked also the way it was written. In the plot, one of the characters, not Mary, a different one, is writing this account, and the other major characters are kind of like listening to her as she reads sections, and they have comments, which I was like, either this is going to be really annoying or really fun, but it ended up being really fun at the beginning because people were talking and you didn't know who they were because you hadn't met them yet. So when you get to them in the story, you already kind of know them, which is fun. And then as the story goes on and you get to know the characters through the actual plot, when they make comments and stuff, it's just like, it's fun. It's those like fun AU like fan fiction moments where it's just the characters being themselves in like a normal situation, and you know, some of them are really snarky, and it was actually a really fun way of kind of like adding character development and a little bit of tension to the story. I definitely really enjoyed that one. So yeah, that was a 4-star read for me, maybe 5 stars. I can't remember what I rated it because that's how my life is going. This is the cute puppy, by the way. You can only see her head right now. Say hi to the camera. This is Rosie. While I haven't really finished anything for a couple of days, I have been reading a lot of different books. I'm doing one of those round robin things where like I'm in the mood for different kinds of books at different points in the day, so we've just been kind of rolling with that. So here is what I'm currently reading. First, after I finished City of Ashes, I was like, oh, I should go to the bookstore and get the next one because I am interested in reading it. And then I read the back and I was like, could tell there were going to be some plot devices that I was just like not in the mood for picking up then. I probably would read it even like now, but I wasn't in the mood for it. So somehow I ended up coming home with Clockwork Angel. I've heard that you should read these in like publication order. So the first 3 books in the Mortal Instruments series were published, and then the next 3 books were the Infernal Devices. And this is a series that was also set in Victorian London, the 1870s, and it was like after the City of Glass or whatever the next book's called, I was gonna come to this one, so I was like, okay, I'll just skip ahead. Like there can't be spoilers for the book because it's set in the past, so that was helpful. And I've heard a lot of things about Will Harrendale and Tessa Gray, and so I was just like curious, and so far I'm actually liking this one the most out of all of the ones that I've read so far, which is like 3. It might be that it's historical fiction. I think it's the characters. I like Tessa and Will and Jem better than Clary and Jason, them. These covers are the new covers and I love them. They are so cool, and I love that the spines are the matchy. They make a picture. Anyway, I'm more than halfway through this, and I'm definitely enjoying it. It's been kind of my like fluffy bedtime read. I also went back to The Bones Season by Samantha Shannon. I had started this before I went on my trip and just left it at home because I didn't want to travel with a library book. I have reached the halfway point. I am really enjoying this. This is kind of what helped me figure out like what I was feeling about the Mortal Instruments series. Really interesting, complex world. There's a lot of questions and like what's going on raised and like, but you get those questions answered, which I appreciate, and they just lead to more questions, and I think that is a better way of writing a book. Like, instead of having one question that like just keeps coming up, what is the answer to this question, this question, this question? It's like, oh, I wonder about this thing. Oh, that complicates things more and makes me have these other 5 questions, which will then get answered and make me have 10 more questions. And so I think that's really interesting. It's a very complex world, and I am really enjoying it. I'll talk more about it when I actually finish it. I'm kind of like, oh dang, it's a trilogy. I started a lot of series this last 2 months. That's not maybe the best thing to have done, but whatever. I also started reading Michael Chabon's The Yiddish Policeman's Union. This is a book he wrote after The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay. I want to see if I liked Cavalier and Clay or Michael Chabon as a writer, and I haven't formed any judgments yet because I am on page 107. But so far I'm liking it. It's a very different book from Cavalier and Clay. The style is even different. It's got a little bit of the like hard-boiled detective flair, and it's about a cop and his partner, who's also his cousin, and they live in this like strip of Alaska that's like kind of independent and was founded by the Jews after World War II. I'm not sure if that's fictional or not. I kind of need to like check because I've never heard about it, and it would be cool if it was real. I'm fine if it's fictional. I just like, I'm curious. And they have this mysterious, the book starts out with this like mysterious murder that the detective wants to solve, but they have this kind of like deadline because the territory is going to revert to US control in like a couple of months, and so they have like a deadline to get all of these different cases solved. And so anyway, I'm enjoying it so far. Like I said, it's quite different from Chabon's other book, Cavalier and Clay, but I am enjoying it. So those are 3 books that I will hopefully finish by the end of the week next week, and you will hear about them in my next week's end wrap up. Thanks so much for watching, you guys, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.